mal daran erinnern, dass Sie sowohl in der üblichen als auch in der elektronischen Weise die Möglichkeit haben, Ihre Spontanwortmeldung oder auch die blaue Karte anzumelden. Und damit beginnen wir in der Aussprache zu den Bestäubern wieder mit dem Rat. Frau Ministerin Tuppurainen, Sie haben erneut das Wort. Bitte schön.
Ein Moment.
Please, could you give Minister Tuppurainen the... Yes, please. No.
Vielen Dank und Entschuldigung.
Please, sorry.
Es hat einen Moment gedauert, aber hier bin ich, Frau Vorsitzende. Honourable members. Pollinators. They are fundamental for the conservation of biodiversity and for life on Earth. They are essential for food production and human livelihoods. They are key to supporting our ecosystems. Pollinators are also important for the economy. Their impact is particularly visible in food production. Almost 15 billion euros of the EU's annual agricultural output is directly attributed to insect pollinators. For many crops, the contribution of pollinators can amount to half of the market value of produce. Over the past decades, the number and diversity of pollinators have seriously declined in Europe as well as globally. Many of them are threatened with extinction. This situation is unsustainable. The functioning of our ecosystem and human well-being are at risk. Many different drivers contribute to the decline of pollinators, and they are all linked to human activity. Much pollinator habitat has been lost to agriculture, resource extraction, and urban and suburban development. Non-native species take away the natural habitat of the pollinators, and unfamiliar parasites and diseases can severely compromise whole colonies of bees. Intensive farming and the use of harmful pesticides are another big threat for pollinators, destroying their habitat and taking away the diversity of the plants they usually forage on. Climate change and temperature changes also have disruptive effects on pollination. Ladies and gentlemen, I agree with you that we need effective measures in the EU to address the root causes of pollinators' decline. The Commission made an important first step in this direction by adopting, in June last year, an EU initiative, especially focusing on pollinators. The Council welcomes this initiative, which seeks to address the problem in an integrated way and to use existing tools and policies more effectively. Like the European Parliament, the Council is of the view that in order to tackle the loss of pollinators, more research is needed to address knowledge gaps and to clearly understand the causes and the consequences of the decline. Pollinator species and populations in the EU also need to be better monitored to better understand their status and trends. Only with scientific knowledge and a full understanding of the problem can we address it effectively. It is also important to raise public awareness about pollinators and their importance for healthy ecosystems and for our well-being. The European Parliament is right in stressing the need to engage citizens, beekeepers and farmers to contribute to pollinator conservation. And the industry, citizens and governments at all levels have to join efforts. International cooperation is another important aspect. The Conference of the Parties to the UN Convention on Biological Diversity agreed on a plan of action for 2018 to 2030 for the conservation and sustainable use of pollinators. In the action plan, stakeholders, including farmers, are encouraged to adopt pollinator-friendly practices and address direct and indirect drivers of pollinator decline. And our member states are active in raising the problem of pollinators' decline in the international community. 11 member states have joined the Coalition of the Willing on Pollinators, established in 2016 at the 13th meeting of the Conference of the Parties to the Convention on Biological Diversity in Cancun. The members of the coalition committed to take action and to work together on pollinators and to share the knowledge and the best practices to encourage other countries to take measures in this respect. Last month, the coalition proposed to have a specific target and indicator for pollinators and pollination in the post-2020 global biodiversity framework. Perhaps the most important and urgent of the priority actions identified by the Commission in the EU Pollinators Initiative is to tackle the causes of pollinator decline. The EU has already put in place a range of measures, such as the protection of natural habitats through the EU nature legislation, support for beekeeping, and restrictions on the use of pesticides harmful to bees. The EU Natura 2000 network of protected areas provides many habitats of vital importance for pollinators. Yet, these measures have not been sufficient. Measures have also been taken to promote pollinator-friendly solutions in agriculture and to support biodiversity in the reformed Common Agricultural Policy for the years 2014 to 2020. All these developments are positive. But despite the action taken so far, the decline of pollinators has not stopped. The Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services report Global Assessment on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services, released in May this year, provides a grim picture. And the global decline of biodiversity at unprecedented rates in human history is to a large extent caused by the loss of pollinators, which are the very basis of habitats and ecosystems. Honourable members, to conclude, it is clear we have not done enough and more efforts are needed to halt the decline of pollinators and maintain and to restore their habitats. The Council therefore calls for rapid and effective implementation of the existing measures by the EU and the Member States to address the loss of biodiversity. The Council also welcomes the European Green Deal adopted by the Commission last week. We also look forward to the publication of the Commission's biodiversity strategy for 2030 with ambitious targets on biodiversity, which we will examine with great interest as soon as it's available. Thank you very much, Madam President, for your attention.
Thank you. And once more, sorry for the desk. So we will be followed by the Commission. Commissioner Kyriakides, you have the floor, please.
Thank you. President, honourable members, I'm addressing this point on behalf of my colleague, Commissioner Kyriakides. The decline of wild pollinators in the European Union is, as you have said, dramatic. The functioning of ecosystems, our food security and well-being are at risk. This problem has vividly captured, as we all know, public attention. In 2016, the European Parliament called on the Commission and Member States to act urgently on this problem. In 2018, the Commission adopted the first ever European Union initiative on pollinators, building on European research projects and following a broad public consultation. This initiative sets long-term objectives and short-term actions, providing the necessary framework to consolidate efforts across sectors and to provide a more effective response of the European Union and its Member States. The scope is comprehensive. More than 30 actions aim to strengthen our understanding of the problem, tackle the main drivers and engage actors across the board. Main threats to pollinators are well known. The initiative addresses directly the loss of pollinator habitats and the use of pesticides, particularly in the context of agriculture. It also addresses directly the threat from invasive alien species. The already existing and future European Union actions on research, climate change and pollution will also be critical for the protection of pollinators. Agriculture is the key sector. It does depend on pollinators, but also exerts a strong pressure on them, whether through intensification of agricultural practices or abandonment of high nature value farmland. Our common agricultural policy is essential to turn these challenges into opportunities. The role of Member States is critical. The future Common Agricultural Policy, in particular, offers them a significant opportunity to improve and scale up their actions on pollinators. As announced in the European Green Deal, and while we are still waiting for the adoption of the new CAP, the Commission will work with Member States to ensure that strategic plans are assessed according to robust and environmental criteria and lead to more sustainable practices. These include precision agriculture, organic farming, agroecology, and ensure these plans work towards the goal of stopping the loss of pollinators. The Commission is currently developing a common European Union monitoring scheme for pollinator species in close cooperation with Member States. The scheme will mobilise scientists, citizens and practitioners to generate data necessary to build robust policy indicators on the status and the trends of the pollinator species. This will ensure that we have the necessary knowledge to assess the effects of our policies, including the Common Agricultural Policy, on the diversity and on the abundance of pollinators. The responsibility to duly deploy the monitoring scheme on the ground lies with Member States. The Commission will coordinate and provide the necessary support, including through the Future Life programme and, of course, Horizon Europe. The European Union Pollinators Initiative is also developing monitoring processes for pressures on pollinators, including pesticides. This will support research on the causes of pollinator declines and better understanding how to effectively tackle them. The initiative aims to reduce the impacts of pesticides on pollinators by strengthening the risk assessment, banning all outdoor uses of the 3 neonicotinoids restricted in 2013, supporting Member States to ensure the sustainable use of pesticides, in particular through integrated pest management. In the European Green Deal, the Commission announced an increased level of ambition to tackle the causes of biodiversity loss, including by reducing significantly the use and the risk of chemical pesticides, as well as the use of fertilisers and restoring damaged ecosystems. The Commission will identify the measures, including legislative, needed to bring about these reductions. And finally, the biodiversity strategy for 2030 and the Farm to Fork strategy, to be delivered in the spring of 2020, will provide strong frameworks for the European Union Pollinators Initiative and help us reach our goal of stopping the loss of pollinators.
Herzlichen Dank, Frau Kommissarin. Und jetzt folgt in der Aussprache Frau Kollegin McGuinness für die Europäische Volkspartei. 1 Minute 30, bitte schön.
Danke sehr. Thank you both